the day he retired, my column appeared, which titled Rangarajan, the Philosopher King.
It was that Rangarajan who recognized me as an economist and encouraged me to go further.
He's devoted most of his working life to public policy, and I think the country is better off for it.
I was more interested in economics than in other subjects. And therefore, and I also decided quite early in life that to be a teacher. I taught for a year, even as I was finishing my PhD. I was at the Wharton School of Finance and Commerce at the University of Pennsylvania. I came back to India, and it was at that time I taught for a time at University of Rajasthan. Went back again, and I taught at the Graduate School of Business Administration of the New York University. I taught for about 2 years, then came back to India and went straight to the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad.
There were very few people who were willing to teach with Dr. Rangarajan as a co-instructor, because Rangarajan was always rated as the best professor by successive batches.
All those economic theories have to be grounded in a business implication, in a management implication. And to do that when you're talking about macroeconomics is difficult. And Dr. Rangarajan was wonderful at doing that.
His drawing room faced our kitchen. And in the morning at 9 sharp, Dr. Rangarajan would be walking to the office. And I always used to get pulled up by my wife saying that, look, it's already 9 o'clock, you don't need to see the watch. And you know, she has been telling me that she would like me to be as punctual as Dr. Rangarajan.
When I was at faculty at Bank of Baroda Staff College, during those days we used to invite him as a guest faculty in our college, some of my faculty colleagues. And I was amazed to see that he will not accept the usual formalities of sending a car and waiting for the official car. He will just take an auto rickshaw and come in auto rickshaw and go back in auto rickshaw to IIM-Ahmedabad.
He may be a banker, he may be administrator, he may be governor, he may be a global person, nobody, but compared to his academic work, I feel that I had greater happiness in that rather than in all these positions.
There was talk. This is the first time an academic was coming in as a deputy governor. His approach was essentially remained academic. He never forgot his basic academics. So what he would do is he'd always work with first principles. And what then very quickly, within a short while, developed was he became a problem solver.
Check clearance was one area in which the Reserve Bank of India at that time took the lead to introduce computerized sorting system. And there was a fear that computerization would lead to displacement of labor, it will reduce the number of people who are to be recruited, and so on and so forth. And that is why that in some sense the committee number 1, very often called the Rangarajan committee number 1, did not even use the word computer. It was called mechanization of the banking system.
He had to take a lot of flack from the unions, and he stood there with the courage of conviction, patiently, and tried to push it through. And that's something which you don't normally credit an economist with.
The period of the 2 years 1990 and 1991 were years when the balance of payments crisis had hit the country.
Dr. Rangarajan was a very cautious man, so he would not make a brash statement. He had foreseen that the measures which we were taken will have a time lag. So before we could get into a default, the recovery would start.
One of the things that could be done was to pledge the gold. The Reserve Bank of India Act permits us two things. One, to keep gold outside India, and also permits us to borrow from the other central banks. So the gold was pledged only to the Bank of England and to the Bank of Japan, and the money was raised. And as you all know, that it was redeemed very, very soon.
I've sat hours with him where he was in like a commander of a ship, seeing every little bit of the gold operation.
It was outstandingly well managed. We've never had a situation where you had a crisis of that seriousness, and 2 years later, I mean, we were able to tell the IMF, we don't need the third year of your loan. And if you look at it historically with other countries, most stabilization programs have been associated with a growth recession. This is a stabilization program that led to a big upswing in growth.
From a system in which we were determining, the Reserve Bank of India was determining the exchange rate, we moved to a slightly modified system in which there was a dual exchange rate system. But within a year, by February 1993, we moved on to a system in which the exchange rate came to be determined more or less by market forces.
He designed how to liberalize the current account, have a sustainable current account deficit, and insisted on hierarchy of capital flows, and in particular how to keep the short-term debt under control and the external debt under control. And this was the original contribution well before the Asian crisis.
We deregulated the interest rate structure. The government also had to go to the market to borrow. As a result, new institutions had to be created. But the dismantling of the regulated or the administered interest rate structure and freeing of the interest rate itself had some impact on the way the banks were functioning.